Cozy games, where you can escape your daily life of customer service jobs and mortgage payments and play a game where you have a customer service job and mortgage payments. But here there are cute animals or villagers that you can flirt with. These games are aesthetically adorable, but what draws us to these games to de-stress? Cozy games do tend to focus on having a very cutesy aesthetic and using very warm colors and soft edges in order to comfort the player. Most of the time, cozy games do a great job of using bright colors and soft aesthetics. Still, I wouldn't consider a game like Celeste a cozy game. It's certainly not relaxing by any means. So what is it about the gameplay that draws us into cozy games? Cozy games are games that have non-violent and relaxing gameplay. That's a vague category, so a lot of games fit into it. The stereotypical games under this category would be simulation or sim games. We have life sims like Animal Crossing or The Sims, farming sims like Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon, dating sims, business sims, cleaning sims, even space or flight sims. What all these games have in common is the emulation of real life, which seems counterintuitive, given the genre is so set on escapism. So why do we, as players, lean back on a system that we are trying to escape from for comfort in a fictional landscape? The answer is counterintuitive, that cozy games fulfill the fantasy for the mundane. Global capitalism has become a stressor in most people's lives. You might think then relaxation should strive to escape it, but relaxation actually strives to reconstruct it in a positive image. Cozy games create a very simplified model of capitalism where labor is equal to how much money you earn. Farming sims especially use this model, given that you can sell your crops and animal produce for wealth. Even in business simulators, you rarely have to worry about paying taxes or advertising. Instead, these games have you focus on doing as much labor as possible. So why do we enjoy labor? Especially when this labor tends to be running a business, physical farm labor, or cleaning, things that aren't very enjoyable on their own. It's likely because we get to avoid the faults of capitalism in a cozy game. In these games, how hard you work directly correlates to how much money you earn. It fulfills the mundane fantasy where debt is repayable and profit is unrestricted. Cozy games tend to fall back on capitalism because it is something that is known and understood by the player most times. By falling back on a system that we're familiar with, we are instantly comforted. What is more comforting is having the flaws of that system taken out or downplayed to an extent where we don't have to worry about them, and the actual struggles of daily life aren't represented in these games. Cozy games rarely have a linear path. Instead, they focus on slow-paced, low-intensity gameplay that goes at the player's pace, whatever that might be. Cozy games even rarely have main objectives, and instead focus on running until the player is done with the game, meaning that the player can make choices, decorate, and earn until they reached a point of satisfaction with the game. This differs from more traditional video games with linear gameplay and objective goals with a strict end to the story. The slow pace is very intentional and necessary for a game to be cozy. One of the external factors that might make the slow pace relaxing is late-stage capitalism. Our economy focuses on growth and work in a short amount of time. Especially with the internet, we live in a very fast-paced world. The careers that cozy games focus on likely aren't possible to make such a profit in today's society. Frank Webster states, "Capitalism ineluctably destroys the peasantry because of these people, small-scale subsistence farmers, locally orientated, involved in monetary exchange, and reluctant to change established customs and ways of work, do not fit readily with the wage labor, supply by market, credit facilities, and the economic dynamicism that is inherent in capitalism." Cozy games are a direct move back to this line of work that does not need to focus on any of these factors. Instead, cozy games focus on early-stage capitalism and a simpler model. In doing so, we slow down the gameplay. There's also a feeling of achievement in these games that is void to the younger generations in the real world. Emma Vossen states that among millennials there is a sense of guilt in people who inherited inherited money to buy a house. And there is also a sense of dread in people who did not inherit money to buy a house and therefore can't afford one. Our housing crisis has often been described as a lottery of whether or not you were born into a family that can offer a deposit on your house. Younger generations can only obtain the fantasy of owning a house on their salaries unless they were born into a financially supportive home. And those that were born into these homes are shown to have guilt for having the privilege of having a house while their peers struggle without the financial assistance that they have. Cozy games create a fictional atmosphere where there is no housing crisis. Cozy games also create the feeling of achievement because you rarely start with a perfect house. In Stardew Valley, you are lucky enough to inherit a farm and escape your corporate job, but you are required to fix the place up, which is shown to be quite the job. In Animal Crossing, you have to pay off a mortgage and work a job before owning your house, and then you might expand it, but that will cost you more debt. The difference between these examples and real life is that there is no punishment for taking your time, and the player can work as slowly towards that goal as they want. There is no eviction or interest on your payment. Instead, the player prioritizes their time and works towards achieving their house at their own pace. In cozy games, there is no long-term debt. There is no housing crisis. There's no generational wealth, and there's no stress or guilt in home ownership. Cozy games aren't made to fulfill the epic fantasy of escapism. They are made to fulfill the mundane fantasy of a comfortable life in a simple system. I think that's why they've been rising in popularity recently, and there was an especially large spike in 2020 with the rise of New Horizons. The idea of normalcy was yearned for in the pandemic, and given the state of economics and finances right now, I don't think it's going downhill anytime. I think the final thing that makes this capitalism so cozy is the personal connections through the video game. Capitalism has become somewhat impersonal through daily life and jobs. Though many people work in customer service, we don't often respect people in customer service. And there is a bit of tension between customer and the patron. This is because our late-stage capitalism works in such a fast pace. However, when we take down the pace, it seems that we have a lot of personal connections with NPCs in video games. I think this is very clear to see in games like Stardew Valley, which take place in a small town, as well as games where you run a business and you have a personal connection with the customers. Even games like Unpacking have a great deal of relationships going on in the background of you unpacking. There's the sense of this intimate relationship you have with everyone around you, and that it's deep and complex. It's something that is not expected or wanted in a professional setting in late-stage capitalism. We treat our workers as a service rather than a person. So to have a small business or a small town have personal connections feels very meaningful and like something that's completely lacking in today's work environment. Cozy games have been really taking off. More are getting played and more are getting made. And the fact that cozy games are considered a subgenre of gaming makes this point very clear. I also mentioned dating sims, which I actually made a whole video about, but long story short, I think the same can be said about the genre, with the state of online dating and in-person dating going on today. Go check it out if you're interested, or let me know what cozy games you want to hear about specifically. I am a big fan of cozy games if you couldn't tell. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck in this economy.